So I'm working on a video right now for the Switch 2 where I do a bit of a deep dive into the trailer that Nintendo released for the system, because there are some very interesting things that they kind of, I don't say glossed over, but went by very, very quickly. And I was able to match up some of it with even the motherboard images that leaked out, finding a few little details here and there. So keep an eye out for that. I think it'll come out tomorrow. But in the meantime, as I'm going through this, I'm thinking about the launch coming up for the Switch 2. And I thought back to the original, well, current Switch launch. And then I was thinking back to the Wii U. And I notice a lot of the discourse right now, the back and forth that I've seen online, is around the Switch 2 being boring, quote unquote. There's a lack of creativity from Nintendo, just based on the idea of it even just being called the Switch 2. But I actually think the path Nintendo's chosen here is going to solve the biggest issue Nintendo's had for quite a while right now, and it's actually kind of an exciting venture just to see what can happen here with Nintendo, especially when it comes to third parties. And we're going to go over that here today. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if you're new. So as I was mentioning, I'm thinking back to the Switch's launch lineup, and I think there are many people who forget how limited it was. In fact, when you got the Switch and you took it out of the box, day one, you needed an update to add the eShop. Like, the eShop actually was not there out of the box day one. That was a thing that technically they pushed a day one update for. And when you actually go on the list of games that were available, so if we just take a look, all right, this is it. This is it. It really was like that. I think they had 9 games, 10 games or something, because they're like the 2 Shovel Knight titles, I believe. But yeah, like 1-2 Switch, Just Dance 2017, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Skylanders, Super Bomberman R, I Am Setsuna, Snipper Clips, Shovel Knight, and then Fast RMX, which Fast RMX was legit. That was a really cool launch title, actually. But everyone was playing The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Clearly, Nintendo needed that title for launch, because otherwise, it would have been rough. It would have been rough. But this was what we had to work with, at least initially. Now, more titles followed suit, clearly, because I think the following month we had Mario Kart 8 Deluxe come out, and that ended up being the best-selling game for the platform. But it was limited. Why was it limited? Well, we came off the Wii U. That was it. Third parties have already admitted multiple times that they underestimated what the Switch was going to do. Bandai Namco famously told investors that. And it's funny, because you feel like Japanese developers in particular would have been there with Nintendo in mind, because typically they do at least well enough, Nintendo for the platform, in Japan. But even they were like, we'll see how this does. The Wii U was, I think, sold, less than the Vita? So, in that in mind, yes, you're going to be like, let's see what we get here. But what people tend to forget, and it's really funny, the Wii U's launch lineup was actually legit. Why? Because it was coming off of the Wii. So if let's take a look. This is the Wii U's launch lineup. And we can just sort of scroll through here a bit, but at the top, you had Ubisoft with Assassin's Creed, Batman Arkham City, Call of Duty Black Ops 2. Yeah, the Wii U launched with a Call of Duty game. You had Darksiders 2, you had Disney Epic Mickey 2, you had FIFA was there as well. You had Game Party Champions. Hey, Just Dance, of course. That was technically there with the Switch. Madden NFL 13, Mass Effect 3, which the issue with that was we had the collection of Mass Effect on other platforms that had Mass Effect 3 included, but here it was full price on the Wii U. You had NBA, New Super Mario Bros. U, Ninja Gaiden 3. You had Sonic All-Stars Racing, Transform, Tank. Classic title there. Tekken Tag Tournament, Transformers Prime. The point here, even Zombie U with Ubisoft, they made an original title for it. I mean, they eventually went to other platforms. You get the idea, right? There were a lot of third-party games there ready to roll for the Wii U because the Wii was successful. And that's despite the fact that Nintendo did the weird Nintendo thing and added the Wii U tablet, which it did add more to it because it was this strange, unique thing, and it was pretty cool when developers took advantage of it. The obvious thing that people would want it for was a map or an inventory system, but it was still there, and it was at least adding functionality that made the game more convenient, but they had to account for it. It wasn't okay, we're going to go from the Wii and make the Wii 2, and it'll just be a better Wii remote and more powerful, but we'll still will keep the course there. Now, the Wii U was also backwards compatible, so that did help out with its launch lineup because you had all the Wii games as well. But in this case, with the Switch, you didn't have that. You had 9 games to start with, 10 games with the 2 Shovel Knight games, and that's kind of it. And they had to wait for everything to sort of populate there on the eShop and in stores. But now, with the Switch 2, the interesting part is twofold. One, they have clearly the back catalog of the massive library of Switch games is ridiculous. We still have to sort of wait and see if there will be any improvements in terms of how those games run. I feel like there will be just in general. I mean, unless they really want to make it so that the games still hold that 360p in certain titles, but I feel like the Switch 2 will most likely give some sort of enhancement, even if it's just down to frame rate, because the system itself is just more powerful, just outright. But on top of that, Nintendo isn't getting weird with this system, all right? And I know that's sort of been a discussion of Nintendo is being too safe with this, but I don't actually think that's a bad thing, because what we're seeing right now is Nintendo introduce a system that, by all accounts, just based on some of the specs that have gotten out there with NVIDIA providing the chip, there are rumored clock speeds, but realistically, the system is going to be, I think, more capable than the Steam Deck, just based on the fact that it would be NVIDIA that's also creating a device using DLSS in docked mode, but also handheld-wise, I do think just based on the way that Nintendo provides developer tools, the SDKs, the ability to get, as people say, closer to the metal of the device when it comes to programming and creating these games, they'll squeeze more out of that system. The Switch 2. So I think in general, you'll have a very capable handheld that will be more capable just as a handheld than the PS4 base. But then also in docked mode, it wouldn't shock me if it performed just better than the PS4 Pro. And that sounds weird to say that. But again, with NVIDIA, DLSS, and all the other things they're providing, I think you'll see that kind of performance, which comes back to the idea of if everything has 4K on the box, it'll be harder and harder with diminishing returns for the mainstream to really be able to tell the difference. It's already been thrown out the idea of, oh, a lot of people in the mainstream don't care about frame rate. I don't know if I buy that completely, because I think you can tell when you actually pick up the controller and move around 60 versus 30. But I get the idea of upscaling becoming so good that it's hard for people to tell if they're looking at a native 4K or an upscaled 4K image, all right? So the point here would then be, you have third-party developers who are ready to go for this system. It's not the situation of coming off the Wii U. It's a situation of coming off of a system that most likely, from what we're seeing, with the sales velocity still kind of there, becoming the best-selling platform of all time. All right? In that case, yeah, you're going to want to create for that system as soon as possible. And if it's capable enough, which looks to be, you're going to move all of those key franchises over, which starts to get back to the point of, if it gets a lot of the third-party mainstream titles that people will typically buy it, they'll buy a Switch for the Nintendo exclusives, but then they'll buy another system even to make sure they can get some of these third-party titles like Rebirth. Well, that's apparently going to go to the Switch too. Okay. Then you go, okay, well, Metaphor. Apparently that's going to the Switch too based on rumors. Call of Duty. Also going to the Switch 2. Microsoft's already outlined that. Nintendo signed the paperwork. We'll probably see that for holiday 2025. Most likely, I assume EA will go all out and have Madden and other things. Then you start to see how those third-party boxes are getting checked on the system. Could the Switch 2 actually be a primary device for most people? I know there are many out there, I'm sure, that that's all they have and that's all they care to play. But you have to look around and go, man, there are a lot of third-party games that are just not on that system. Well, if they start showing up, you go, oh, wow, okay, maybe the Switch 2 could just be that third-party device as well, because it also provides that level of convenience. That's the thing to really keep an eye on here, and one of the things that could be really Nintendo's biggest issue has been that, not having the third-party games across the board, but it's sort of, at this time, is set up to sort of fix that for Nintendo. And that's going to be a very interesting thing to see unfold with this device going into not only the launch, but also years after that. So we need to get to this April 2nd Direct to see what they're ready to show off, because it wouldn't shock me if you had all these developers and big publishers just send out people to show up on stage. And it also wouldn't shock me if you see Phil Spencer show up on stage as well. And it's a very intriguing timeline here for Nintendo. So in my mind, I actually think it's a good thing that they're going about this in a way to where it's not some crazy idea throwing things off a bit, and they're keeping with NVIDIA to also seemingly keep compatibility and maybe even development kind of streamlined there for third parties and even Nintendo themselves, going into a time where development timelines are just taking longer and longer to achieve. So yeah, I'm all on board with this, actually. The mouse stuff that's shown off, I don't think that's enough to affect things because it doesn't affect the form factor or throw in some weird curveball. Seems like something that developers can ignore if they don't want to use it, or take advantage of it if they do, like an RTS or I guess even a first-person shooter. But let me know what you guys think about this down below, because as I was thinking about this more and more, it feels like the Switch 2 and it being more of a conservative approach to next generation is actually the most logical one for business, but also for the player base in getting more and more of these third-party games day one. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.